Welcome, everybody. My name's Jeff St. Laurent. This is the Tuesday Live Show. Today's topic is how to create or do or take action on and plan your first webinar. It could be an event, face-to-face, etc. I'm going to talk about a webinar just so I'm more specific with things. Simple, easy to do, but often very overwhelming. And a lot of us are really unsure of like their first steps, especially if we've never done one before. So I'm gonna give you kind of like the down low of how you can set one up and do one in the next week if you want to. I do record all of my Tuesday live shows. I put them in my university at sellingcoaching.com. I have a lot of great resources as I help coaches transition to a full-time business. If you want to start off with a great resource, go right to my homepage of sellingcoaching.com. Enter your name and email. That's not only going to get you my great audio resource, which is launching your coaching business, the first 3 vital steps. That's also going to put you in my email community. You'll get an email from me on a weekly basis, giving you some great information and sharing you some of the great offerings and programs that I have as well. With that being said, let's talk about creating or planning your first webinar. And when we hear the word webinar, sometimes we can get overwhelmed. We think about, oh my God, can I do a webinar? What am I going to do a webinar on? The technology's too crazy. How do I do this? And then we don't end up doing anything. We've seen webinars. We've probably enrolled in webinars. If you haven't, it's very easy to just go on Facebook as an example and scroll through your news feed, find a sponsored ad, and you're going to see someone promoting a webinar. Right. And so we think like we see all this, we click on that, it goes to this opt-in and this fancy page and it starts in 3 minutes and 5 seconds. And, then you get all these automated emails in this funnel system and it's like, oh my God, I can't do this. It's too much. But hold on a second. Just let's back off for a second. Let's just slow down and let's just realize like, what is the purpose of a webinar? The purpose of a webinar when we're starting off especially is to not necessarily in any specific order, but number one, it's for us to get an opportunity to begin to practice sharing our message, right? It's giving us a platform where we might not have other speaking engagements yet. We might not have the opportunity to have a crowd that we can speak to. So it's an opportunity to say, I'm going to host this platform and I'm going to invite people to this. And you might be thinking, I don't have anybody to invite, but you do. I'll tell you. But the point is that it gives you an opportunity to practice speaking, but it also gives you an opportunity to start opening up conversations, to invite people to your network, to invite people to what you're doing. Hey, I'm doing my first webinar, and be proud that it's your first webinar. Call it your first webinar if you want to. But either way, it gives you an opportunity to get your message out there, open up conversations, invite people in, potentially grow your audience or your list, if you will, because you're opening up conversations around a topic that you're excited about. So let's just think about it like this. So let me break down the simple steps of this. So if we're going to do a webinar, the last thing you want to do is plan it too far out. Like, oh, well, I'll do one like next month or in a couple months from now. Where's the urgency to do anything on it now? You think, oh, I got to do all this preparation time. No, the prep work and setting everything up and getting it out there, the marketing and figuring out what you're going to do and say, that comes with an urgency of when the webinar is. So what I'm suggesting is the latest you want to do is set a webinar a couple weeks out from today. So let's just say, and today's actually a Tuesday, but no matter when we're watching this live or recorded, let's just say today is a Monday, and you're going to do your webinar 2 Mondays from today. So if today's Monday, there's next Monday, and there's the following Monday, which is when we're going to actually do our webinar. And let's just say we're going to do it at 7 p.m. your time. And that's what you've got to do. Is the first thing you got to do is you got to pick a date and you got to pick a time. And you got to forget about, oh my God, well, what works best and when will people attend? Like, first you got to figure out what works best for you. When are you going to be at your optimal level of, up in presenting mode? So pick a day and time that works for you, that you could be alone, where there's not kids and dogs and stuff screaming outside your door, so you can be focused and alert. That's when you pick and do your webinar. So you pick a date, you pick a time. All right, once you got that, so that's 2 weeks from today. So then what you do is, once you have that, then you back it up a week and you say, okay, I've got to have something live and ready to go to start promoting this a week from today, which is a week from the webinar. At that point, it'll be right in the middle. So between now and the next several days, all you got to do is you've got to pick a topic and you've got to write a brief description. The topic comes from what you feel the main outcome is, or what is your main message? What are you trying to get across to people? What's the one thought you want to convey in this webinar? That's your topic title. So today, for this, we'll call what I'm doing right now a little webinar, right? It's my weekly show, but it's no different from planning a webinar to say, okay, what's my main message? And my main message today was, and this is what I said to myself, what's my main message? Is I want to talk them through planning their first webinar. So that was my title, planning your first webinar. That's it, right? It's very short, it's succinct, it's not fancy, but the great part about that type of marketing is it's very literal, is people read that and they go, oh, this is for me or not. And if it's of interest to them, guess what? They put it in their calendars. If it's not, they move on. That's what we want. To me, that's a good title. So in this instance, I was like planning your first webinar. So that's your title. What's your main outcome? And then brief description. And I'm going to guide you 3 to 5 sentences. That's not the rule. It's a guide, right? How much do you have to say? It's like planning. So now you think about, okay, what's your outcome? And then what's a little bit about what you want to say, right? So mine's planning your first webinar, right? And so I'm like, all right, so many coaches, want to get out there, grow their audience, get more exposure, but they're scared to do so. And webinar is a great option to do that, but they don't know how. There's the technology. There's all these questions that come up, right? So come to this event of mine, my Tuesday live show, to learn more about all the step-by-steps on how to create your first webinar, right? That's it. Short, brief description. So you think about yourself, what is my main topic title? What is that outcome? That's the title. And then just a little bit about what your thoughts are around that. That's also beginning to prep you in your head a little bit. That's all you need over the next, let's say 2 to 3 days. And so once you do that, then we're going to keep this technology really, really simple. And I'm not going to assume you have anything. In terms of where we do this webinar, now people are like, oh my God, I've got to, get the higher version of Zoom so I can have webinar capabilities, or I've got to go get Webinar Jam or any of the other webinar softwares that are out there. And so it's like, well, you could do that, but let's just get our first one under our belt. What I'd recommend is, even overusing Zoom or like a free version of Zoom, because you could use a free version of Zoom as an example. Let's say your first webinar, let's do it 30 minutes to keep it simple, right? So 2 Mondays from now, 7 to 7:30 p.m. your time, right? Keep it simple so it's not, oh my God, I'm doing an hour, which might freak you out. But instead of using Zoom, I would recommend you using either YouTube Live if you have a YouTube channel, Facebook Live broadcast if you have Facebook, or Instagram Live if you're using Instagram. If you're not using any of them, just pick one, like Facebook or Instagram probably, if you have a profile, and just broadcast live from there. And the reason I'm recommending that is because you're thinking oh, well, Jeff, don't I need certain software, things like that? It's like, well, listen, you can still host a webinar like this and broadcast live. And the advantage to doing it that way, especially for your first one, is if you're using another webinar software, number one, that you're paying for, it's going to get more complicated in terms of figuring out and setting it up. It's just going to delay your process in getting out there. Or if you're using Zoom, even the free version of that, you're waiting on the back end and it's 7 p.m. and no one's there. And then you're all geared up and fired up and nervous and sweating and things like that. And then no one shows up, let's say. So then what do? Do you go on? So then you start and then someone shows up 5 minutes later. Or do you just oh my God, no one's here, and you just get off and then people show up later, right? Or no one shows up at all, right? So when you broadcast live like this, it's not a traditional webinar that you've maybe a technical version of that, right? But is there any difference than, a lot of the recorded webinars end up just being a video that they put into software that they replay, right? So all this ends up with a live video broadcast. If no one shows up, is you have the recording of that, which you can then use later on if you really liked what came out, and add in other components as you go along. But the great part about doing a live video broadcast is that if no one shows up, it doesn't really matter, right? I could be doing my live broadcast right now, no one's here, it doesn't matter. I'm still doing my thing. So at 7 p.m., you go live and you broadcast no matter what. And if people show up in a live broadcast, a little number in the little corner shows up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, and then it might drop back down or go back up, or goes up in the middle and drops back down. You just kind of keep doing your thing and get the presentation done and out and do your best. And that's really the main objective of doing your first webinar is planning it, executing it, marketing it, and doing it no matter what. So on the back end, you can be like, wow, I did that. It really wasn't so bad, because you know that's what's going to happen. So then you could do it again. And each time you do it, you add in a little bit of components, you make things better. Then maybe you get software, you start to see if it's something that you like to do, if it's a viable marketing avenue for you or not. And after a handful of webinars or so, you decide like, wow, is this going to be something I want to do on a more continuous basis, or I want to try some other marketing methods? But at a minimum, you've got the experience, you've opened up conversations, you've had a presentation that you've, repeated 5 times, let's say, if we'll do the same one. So you've gotten better at it, and that's going to translate to a live face-to-face presentation, or maybe a free resource or a free giveaway or something like that. So the advantage of it is 100-fold, if I can say it like that. So now we've got the software we're doing it on, which is, let's just say, a live video broadcast platform. We've got the date, we've got the time. It's for 30 minutes. All right. So in the next week, we need to have something ready to start marketing. Let's just say, as an example, we're going to do a Facebook Live broadcast for our webinar, right? That's just the location. I'm doing my first webinar. I'm doing my webinar on this topic. Where do we do it at? Here's where we're at, right? And so even for the first one, you don't even necessarily have to have an opt-in for it, right? Now, I would normally recommend, if we're working together one-on-one in my groups, when I do this with my clients, I will definitely have them have an email platform like Aweber, as an example, and in there they can create a landing page with an opt-in, right? So they can have the title of the webinar and the description of it, and then have an opt-in if you want to register for this event, enter your name and email, and then there's an email that automatically gets sent out. Still pretty simple, right? But if you've never done it before, it adds in a little bit of component for it. But again, that's what I would recommend. For your first webinar, I wouldn't even recommend having that just right out of the gates. Again, let's keep this real simple. So what you could do is you can go to Facebook and you can create a Facebook event. If you haven't seen a Facebook event, you can just go to your profile. If you have a Facebook business page, there's an option for events. Click on events, you can create an event. And that's where then, once you have your title and brief description, you can actually put it onto this event that you're creating, and guess what? That's your event registration page, and that's what you can share with people. You can invite people to. You can actually use the Facebook platform to actually invite Facebook friends. You can use the link to promote it on different social platforms if you're there. You can send it via email to people. Hey, I'm doing my first webinar. Click this link and click going, right? There's a kind of little registration, so you can start to see people who are going. It's not a foolproof way of actually, getting names and emails right out of the gates. But like I said, I'm trying to keep this as streamlined, as simple as possible. So the goal would be this week, before this coming Monday, to pick a date, pick a time, 30 minutes, write a title down, brief description, build it, get it over to Facebook event, get that in there, edit it, and publish it. That's a week. Now that could happen in a couple hours if you're focused. It's not like you need the week. I'm just giving it in a time frame, right? You could, if you wanted to, you could have a webinar, this Friday. Let's assume it's a Monday today when you're watching this. You could have a webinar this Friday at whatever, noontime or 8 p.m. if you wanted to, right? And then today, like literally brainstorm a title, brief description, get it up on a Facebook Live event, start promoting it this week, and have a webinar at the end of this Friday. Obviously, in the meantime, figure out what the heck you're going to say on the webinar, but now you have a deadline, you have an urgency to do that, and you get it done, right? So pick your own time frame. But what I wanted to outline very simple for you, and to kind of break it down, is to say, like, listen, rewrite some of the rules on what these things have to be, especially when you're starting off and this is brand new to you, because at the end of the day, what's most important for you is to actually follow through with it and start to feel more confident in your message and what you're doing, and show yourself like, wow, that wasn't so bad. So, right. So now I did this. How can I improve this? Little bit each time. You're a work in progress. Your business is a work in progress. And so your ability to grow as a person, being able to start to articulate your message more clearly, more confidently, especially, comes from actually doing it, not thinking about it behind the scenes. And that's what today really was about, is giving you the ability to show you like, wow, I can rewrite some of these rules and I could do something right now. I don't have to spend a dime to do it. I spend a little bit of time, just put it out there and just see what happens. And then you can grow from there. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully you have some real good, strong takeaways, and then you can actually execute it. So until next week, Take action on this. If you want to write in the comments, just, hey, Jeff, this is great. Give me some of your takeaways, any of your questions. If you're doing a webinar, write in the comments when your webinar is. Share the link for your event or whatever you're doing, even in the comments here, and I'm happy to check that out. Anyways, thank you all so much, and good luck on taking action.